Okay, so I'm back. I'm the Geek, and this is me speaking. Uh, and I realize I did not do that the first one. I realized that retroactively. But this is my review of Piranha's 3D, and this is a really tough one because it makes me sound like less of a it makes me sound like less of a serious critic when I say that I enjoyed this movie. It really does. You know, and that's something weird coming from me. I mean, despite the fact that I'm only I just graduated high school recently. Like, despite that, I've seen a lot of old movies, and they're some of my favorites. My favorite movie is a toss-up between 12 Angry Men and Citizen Kane. Uh, I mean, really, I mean, one of my favorite horror movies of all time is Hard Candy, and that's a psychological thriller. Yeah, sure, I enjoy the Saw movies. I've admitted that in past reviews, but I think I'm sort of justified by the fact that Saw 6 was a little bit deeper than people gave it credit for. So Piranhas 3D, there's no such thing. There is no added depth, there is no second meaning to Piranhas. It's just simply a bunch of stupid teenagers go to spring break in, short bikinis and stuff and get eaten by piranhas. You get what you pay for. I had actually never seen a trailer to this movie at all, which is weird for me because usually whenever a new trailer comes out, I'm the first one to sit down and watch it. I'm subscribed on YouTube to Viso trailers, and basically whenever a new trailer comes in, I just sit down and I watch it, and I'm just like, oh. Even if it's like movies that I know will not be coming to the theaters that are near me, I at least like put it away in my memory banks for like, okay, see this movie if you see it. But with Piranhas, I'd never actually seen the trailer, despite the fact that I had been told of it, and I knew that it was coming out because I had seen posters for it constantly. The theater that I constantly go to, in case there are any of you out there that are fans of mine, is Cinema World in Fitchburg, Mass. And for the longest time, there had been a Piranha's 3D poster like directly at the entrance behind the ticket booth. And I always look at those posters no matter what, even if it's only like a week after or even a couple of days after in this case, because I just do. I just like looking at the posters because it like tells me, okay, if that's a good poster, then I'm gonna go and look for the trailer. But in Piranha's case, I saw the poster and it just sort of did nothing for me at first. At first, I mean, I thought to myself, okay, this is an obvious Jaws ripoff, and then nothing. Which is weird because usually when I see a horror movie poster, I at least think about it because horror is sort of my pet peeve. It's kind of it's my, it's my little pet project. I guess you could say it's my guilty pleasure. It's my ultimate guilty pleasure is the horror genre because a lot of it sucks. I mean, a good 50-60% of it sucks. Especially nowadays, it's at least 70-80. But at the same time, I just go and see them constantly. Like if there's new horror movies in theaters, I at least think about seeing them. Piranha's case, I just didn't. I was just kind of like, and this is coming from someone who saw Haunting in Connecticut and Last House on the Left, the remakes. I mean, trust me, there's usually no low that I will sink to when it comes to a horror movie. But in Piranha's case, I was just kind of blasé about it until I actually decided to go and see the movie. That was today. Today, I was just sort of at the theater. My aunt took me, and she was going to see the Wayans Brothers writers movie Vampire Sucks, and I was just like, I don't want to see that. So I looked at Piranhas, and I was like, that did come out, didn't it? So I decided, okay, I'm gonna go into this despite the fact that I'm going in completely blind. I didn't know who directed it, I didn't know who wrote it, I didn't know who was in it. Nothing. So the credits started up. And the credits were actually pretty promising because it was very classic 80s. It was extremely simplistic credits. It was just yellow credits with a black outline. And I was just like, that's a good way to start. That's a good way to start any movie that tributes to the 80s. Simple credits. No ripple effects or, crossfading or anything. Just simple yellow with a black outline. That screams 80s. It's just simplicity. And then, after a while, obviously, the title screen came up. And, I was like, this is still promising because I had to go and see the 3D one because there is no 2D version of Piranhas at all. Uh, so I sat down and I watched it, and honestly, the title was not as jumpy as I thought it would be. I thought that the title would go like, but it actually didn't. It just sort of sat there, and I was like, still promising start. But what really drew me was in the credits were listed two names that I knew off the top of my head as a lover of movies, Ving Rhames and Christopher Lloyd. I was like, really? I'm seeing a movie that stars Ving Rhames and Christopher Lloyd? And Ving Rhames is the only black cop in this movie. I know that a lot of graduate horror movie fans are sitting there going, "Oh crap, he dies." And you're correct, but he dies with serious dignity. I mean, he dies in the same way that like all black characters in horror movies should die, and that is going out doing something so fucking awesome that it just defies reality. He goes out shooting shotgun shells into a school of piranhas until he runs out, at which, instead of reloading, because that would be the sensible thing to do, is getting on a boat and reloading. And there were plenty of boats around him. In fact, there was Ren directly behind him, but he chose not to. Instead, he ripped the motor off of the boat and used it like the lawnmower scene from Dead Alive to kill the piranhas surrounding him. And he continued to do this even while the piranhas, not being idiots, of course, you know, as Christopher Lloyd eventually says in the movie, they're thinking, they're methodical, they're smart creatures. I'm sorry, my Christopher Lloyd impression sucks, but, you know, as the piranhas are chewing away at him, and like he's up to here in water, like he's getting chewed all over the place. He was still just going like ah, and just slicing up piranhas. I was like, that is the way you go out. And you know, there's another thing. You know, if you're doing a tribute to the '80s, yeah, be obvious about the cliches that you're ripping off. Like the minute that we all saw Ving Rhames, we were like, oh my god, it's a black guy in a horror movie. He's gonna die. But still, Ving Rhames. And Christopher Lloyd was a nice touch. Christopher Lloyd plays a fish specialist who appears for only like 2 scenes, but he was just so brilliant because he was just playing Christopher Lloyd. And he was just so great. And he basically, his first scene was just to say, yes, they're piranhas, and they're big ones. And the second one was simply the setup for a sequel scene, which I will not spoil, but honestly, I think that you can probably guess it in your heads. But no, the one that really steals the show, the one that you absolutely, positively have to look out for, is Jeremy O'Connell as Derek Stone. He's a porno director, and yet he's my favorite character in the entire movie. Why? Because he has the kind of stupid humor that you would see in, like, Superbad. But unlike Superbad, which I do not like, to this day I will say I did not like Superbad pretty much at all except for McLovin and the cops. They were pretty funny. But he encompasses what Superbad could not do, and that was stupid, potty-mouthed humor being spoken by a likable, eccentric character. And he's a jackass. I'm surprised that I actually like him as much as I do, but I really wished that he would not die, but I knew that he was going to, because he was a jackass, and it's a horror movie. And anyone's a jackass, especially to the main nerdy character, they just kind of have to die. In fact, anyone who's not the main character's girlfriend or possible direct family has to die, and thankfully most of them do. But he is just, almost his entire dialogue is just, oh my god, look at them titties, it's like the best, this is better than any choir I've seen you been to, boy. But he's just so eccentric and so over the top that I found myself unable to not like him. I found myself laughing every moment that he appeared on screen. Not even the scenes when he had dialogue, but just when he was there. It was just funny. But the last cameo that I have to announce, and you know, you're probably wondering, how am I 9 minutes in and I've not even talked about whether the movie is good yet? I liked it. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was funny. I thought it was enjoyable. But Eli Roth stars in this movie. His entire dialogue is variations on the word breast, and yet he's just as funny as Derek Stone. So, that's it for me. I'm out of time, so go see Piranha. Do it. I'm the Geek, and I'm